Mhm. Do this back and hey, you guys. All right. I think we are live. You guys let us know if you can see us, if you can hear us. I'm going to jump on here and kind of do our thing. Another quarantine content, this one about mental health during COVID and quarantine and just being in the house. You guys, let us know where you are watching from. Very much interested. Let us know that you can see us, that you can hear us, that everything is moving on your end. I'm really excited to get into this conversation today. This is one that is near and dear to me on a personal level as well as a professional level. So I'm super excited about this conversation. Yeah, guys, let us know. I see California. Alicia's watching from our YouTube, which is great. I love this. California.
Oh, that's probably my sister. Shout out to Alicia.
Hey, sis. What's up? I love it. I love it. Yes, definitely let us know. And for those of you, please share this. If you're on the YouTube channel, if you're on the Nomadness Travel Tribe Facebook fan page, share this with your people. If you're in Tribe, it's a private group, so you're not going to be able to share it, but it is completely open and shareable on our Nomadness Travel Tribe Facebook fan page. Definitely share it throughout this conversation. We're going to be getting into the goods. You guys are going to learn a lot about me. You're going to learn a lot about the good work that Ms. Young is doing over here. The good work, the important work, the necessary work, which is absolutely needed in this moment. So I'm going to start off a little bit like a lot of folks don't know this about me, but I was diagnosed with anxiety disorder when I was in college. So it was going into my junior year, and it was actually over the summer working on the way to work where I had my first ever panic attack, and it was crazy. My mother was in the car with me, and I was like, she essentially ended up rushing me to the hospital. We didn't know what was happening.
That's usually what happens.
Listen, I got rushed to the hospital. We were in the car. She was on the way to drop me off to work, and I started feeling like I couldn't breathe. My hands went cold, but my body was like flushed with heat. I felt like I couldn't get enough air in. I had a heaviness that was sitting on my chest the whole weekend leading up to this Monday morning going to work. My heart started racing. My thoughts started racing. And I was like, oh my God, like I'm getting ready to die.
I'm dying. Most people say, if you've ever said this, put this in the comments, if you'll admit it. But when I talk to folks who've had a panic attack before, they always say it literally feels like you're dying. And they're like trying to get me to understand. And I'm like, I understand.
And you don't know what's happening. Right. So it really feels like you're dying because you're just like, what is the deal? Like, what is going on? And so my mother was freaking out, but my mother has a background in medical. So luckily she literally rerouted the car, found the nearest hospital and took me there. And as soon as they said that I didn't have to go to work, all of my vitals went down. Wow. So I'm a creative and an entrepreneur by trade and just by life. Right. And I was working at a corporate setting that was so unlike me. And every day for this summer was just fighting, right? Right. And so that was the first day that my anxiety kicked off. And after then, I had many anxiety attacks. I lived with anxiety disorder for almost daily in college, but I was hospitalized twice. And that was the first time I was rushed to the hospital. So we're going to get into this because I want to talk about anxiety because it's something that plagues us. But let's first get into the woman of the hour. Okay. Yeah. So listen, we have Deran Young here. She is the creator, founder, president, all things important to the Black Therapist Rock collective community, Facebook group, online Instagram page. And researching this, I found out so much about you because you're also been a longtime Nomadness member. You are a traveler, sis, like a traveler. And so
it goes down.
It goes down. And so I'm so interested in how this conversation is going to go and kind of like the intersections for you. Open advocate of this, but let's go through this, right? You are now a senior level consultant, right? Like you said, I'm the therapist for the therapist. And I was like, we need you. You are ever important because I don't know how my therapist deals with me. They got to offload on somebody, right? I say, if anybody's making money right now during the quarantine, it's the therapist. Absolutely.
And in that, right, when we make money, we don't make it the easy way.
Right.
There's an impact, right? And so that's why Black Therapist Rock was created, because there was an impact on me from all the things that happen in the world, just being Black.
Yeah.
And traveling, or, being bold enough to live your life out loud, you're going to experience some heartaches, some hardships along the way.
Absolutely.
And most people don't know that anxiety literally means fear.
Yep.
Right?
It's your fight or flight syndrome, just reacting for no reason.
Well, there's a reason. You just don't know the reason. The front part of your brain doesn't know why the back part of your brain is freaking out, saying we're about to die.
Right.
And there's a disconnect. And society kind of fosters that. There's a lot of fear around travel right now. But let's just be honest, there's always a lot of fear around travel as far as like society and the messaging, especially if you're traveling to the countries that I love to travel to, like countries in Africa and Asia. I feel like there's always a stigma around, first of all, Black people traveling, and then, young Black people, as well as, okay, where are you going? Why would you want to go to China? There's that stigma around exactly where we're going. If you're not going to the Bahamas or, that kind of thing, people kind of look at you like, what's wrong with her?
Right. I totally understand. I have some feedback. If there's a way to pump up your volume, let us know.
No.
You sound good. You sound clear. But if you can pump it up, I know I talk loud, so it may be fine. I'll calm down.
Better?
We'll see. We'll get the feedback from everybody about it. Yeah. But I wanted to get into your travels and then talk about how this intersected. Now, I didn't know this. During a 6-month stay that you had, you created a guidance and counseling center at a high school in Ghana, which I think is super dope. Creating scholarship programs.
Yeah.
While a part of your travel as well, and doing these things, living in Italy for a year, right? So here's what I want to know. Talk to us about how travel has played a part in what you do, but let's start at the intersection. The topic of travel and then where it intersects with your work. Let us know how did this come about?
Well, I like to say that I'm a therapist for the therapist because I've been a client for a very long time. And I grew up with a mother who struggled with mental illness that was untreated, and also some addictions and substance abuse issues. So we didn't have an easy childhood. And then I realized, like, on my way out of high school, joining the military, that there was things that I had learned about life that may or may not be correct about, like, really the way to cope. And to be honest, the best way that my mom, primarily the way that my mom coped, is we moved. When shit got real, or when things got overwhelming for a mom of 3 children, a single mom of 3 children, I think the best thing that she could think to do was like, okay, let's just start over. Let's move, keep it moving, and try somewhere else, right? So we moved so much that I really don't remember like ages, or a lot of people remember like what grade they were in. I have like all my memories are kind of blurred, because there was no sense of consistency or structure or normal, But I think that that's kind of what fueled my travels, is because for me, there was no home. There wasn't I'm still learning how to develop that sense of home. So I left home, whatever that means, at 18, joined the military. So what comes with that? Travel, right?
Absolutely.
I was okay. So, moving around, different homes, different, like just temporary locations is what I kind of see it as now, stations, if you will. And so I think that my upbringing and my kind of personality really paved the way for me to be someone who was in love with travel and sometimes escapism, like, okay, the question I like to ask myself now is, why do we want to travel? Because if it's for a purpose and it's well thought out and it's not impulsive, then maybe this is something that we really need. It's enriching for my soul. I really do feel that travel is very therapeutic. However, if you're afraid to stay where you are, like a lot of us are, or have found that we may be, if home doesn't feel safe, if where you currently are in your experience at your current job, whatever it is that your situation, maybe your relationship doesn't feel safe, whatever it is about home, like where we are now in the present, that makes you want to escape, you want to explore that. You don't always want to feel like you have to be somewhere other than where you are.
But don't we always do this? Isn't there a bit of escapism. I mean, we even see it in groups like No Madness, right? What are people running away from? So somebody who used to work with me, Brittany, I love this comment that she made. She had this saying, she said, no matter where you go, there you are.
There you are. That's my favorite saying.
And it's one of these things that really puts everything in perspective when it comes to people traveling. So let's talk about the escapism that people assume or think that they get mentally when they go on into a different place and travel.
Well, I think, like you said, Evie, when you're maybe like for me, I was in the military. I ain't no military type. And I was there for 18 years. So I think there are parts of us that maybe want to subscribe to the societal norm, like to purchase a home, have the corporate lifestyle, to have that stability that society dictates for us. And so it's like, okay, that's what I'm supposed to want, that American dream, quote unquote. But some of us were like, that may or may not be for me, and I want to explore some other things. But wrestling with that, having that internal conflict, I think, is what gets us in a place where, we are starting to say, okay, this doesn't feel like home for me. What does home look like for me? So you have to ask yourself, when you find yourself in those experiences where you're feeling alone at home, or surrounded by people, what is it? What's the life for me?
Right. Let's talk about feeling trapped in quarantine, because this is something that has come up many times over. And I'm interested in the audience that's watching. What are some of the feelings that you've had being at home in quarantine? I know we have not had a universal US mandate, thanks to our lack of leadership. So depending on what state you're in, you may have been in supreme lockdown, or you may have, been able to go out at various areas, or you may be completely opened if you're in Georgia and Texas as of last Friday, right? You know what I'm saying? Florida, right? At the beach, literally as we speak. So with that being said, levels of isolation. So I'm interested in the people watching. What are some of the feelings that you've been going through? What are some of the questions that have been coming up for you during this quarantine and while you've been at home? And what's the level of quarantine you've been going to? Because I know, Deran, when we spoke about this, it was like the feeling of isolation that comes. Let's speak to what people may be feeling and giving them some like coping skills to deal with this in this moment.
Yeah, so I want to talk about my personal experiences, because I feel like many of us learn that way from like real life examples. I had kind of a heads up because of my military connections. I had a heads up that this was going to be happening about 3 weeks before it happened. And I mean, my anxiety kicked in immediately.
Wow. You're the
Why am I so anxious? Nothing has even happened yet. But
wow.
What if, so many what ifs. And my mind was spinning. And I was like trying to call every single mother I know. I'm a single mom. And I was just like, I need to help all my friends and all my people, and I really did feel like apocalypse, that the apocalypse was happening. This was the end of the world. We were living in our last and evil days, and I needed to get out. Like my brain was on fire saying, this is not safe, right? So I realized that, and I started to ask myself, like, what is this about? Really sitting with myself, getting centered in the highest version of myself and asking me, what am I really afraid of? So I realized that, like, for so many of us, it was stemmed from my childhood, feeling like things weren't safe. And when they weren't safe, they were almost life-threatening, right? When you grow up with so much trauma, like many of us may, these things can feel like you're being re-traumatized all over again. That's what it's really about. It's like, this is happening, and I'm having all the sensations, all the experiences that I had at that time, even though I'm currently physically in a different moment.
Right.
So you asked for coping skills. What did I do? Like I said, I started to sit with myself and get grounded. For a lot of people, if you haven't gone to 15 years of counseling like me, maybe you need a therapist to help you with that, or a friend. The other thing is, I also realized just how isolated I was. Like, you're going to be in the house by yourself for who knows how long.
Right.
Who do you really have here to support you, or even, on the phone to support you? So really starting to think about, what is my support team going to look like? So that's what I've learned through therapy, right? Through many, many years of therapy, that you have to build a strong support team that helps you emotionally, right? And as therapists, we help a lot of people. So maybe that's how you are. You're the go-to person for everybody. But who do you go to? I'm like, okay, who am I going to call when I'm falling apart?
Right, absolutely, especially as entrepreneurs too. So we're getting some feedback from the question that I asked. We have Sabrina here from Virginia.
Hey, Sabrina.
She said that there's a high level of quarantine, but she has a new baby and was already in. However, now she wants to go somewhere, but she goes on drives and that's helped. Somebody else actually brought up the idea of road trips and how that is something that we're going to see. We have Alicia from California. Callie is on the stay-at-home order extended until June 19th. Mine is fear. What will it be like to go back out? Can I really make my teenagers 14 and 16 stay in the house another month? I'm having anxiety. So this is real. These are the responses from people that are all around. We have Glenisha, actually. She says that she knew about this early as well. She knew it was coming as well, so she felt prepared. However, after a month, and I accepted that it was going to take place longer than what we thought, I felt a lot of anxiety and depressed. Actually, I like the fact that she also spoke to depression. So one of the things that helped me get through my anxiety was the Midwest Center for Anxiety and Depression. And it was like with Lucinda Bassett. I remember my mom got me the like 16-week tapes when I was in college. And I'm like listening to the cassette tapes, doing the workbook, trying to get my whole brain together. And at the end of this, I actually have 10 tips for people who are going through anxiety, things that have just helped me. I'm not a professional, but these are things that have helped me. Like I said, I was diagnosed like, gosh, at this point, almost 15 years ago. And so it's something that if it can help one person, I would love to. But then we also have the other side of this, right? So we have Ebony who chimed in and she said, stay at home has been liberating for me. Freedom from the rat race obligations and so much time for self-care and all the me things. And I think that people are going through phases. Some people feel like Ebony, some people don't. And I also think that a lot of people are a mix. I can say for me, I'm a mix. I'm traveling. I was in India when this hit and everybody was like, and 45 was on the horn telling everybody to get back home. Right. So for me, there were times where it's like, damn, this is the most I've seen my home and my cats and all of this other stuff. But then at the same time, if you are somebody who is fueled off of productivity, I know that personally, my energy, I'm a momentum gal. I'm fueled off of momentum. And I mean, literally physical momentum. So I like moving around. I like doing things. So there's moments where I'm more Ebony. And then there's other moments where I'm like hyper Evita. And so let's talk to the people who may be seeing this as, the stay at home, the benefits, they feel liberated from this. What does that look like for them? And the people who go through the waves, because I think most of us probably go through the wave.
Yeah. I'm one of those people and I do this for a living. So, we have this saying, all parts are welcome. All parts of who you are and your experience, we want to welcome that. And one of the things that some people have a hard time welcoming is if productivity is your thing that's going to get you through this and it's what you're comfortable doing and it's safe for you to do it, and vice versa. If you realize a part of me is too productive and I've kind of, not been able to enjoy other parts of my life, do that, who we are and what we need day to day really changes. If you're asking yourself, if you wake up in the morning and ask yourself, what do I need today? If you're growing and evolving the way we're designed to, hopefully that changes. Yeah. So embrace it all. That's what I'm one of those roller coaster people. And I'm like, okay, where are we at with it today? Every day I ask myself.
And I think it's important to check in. That's what Marty put. Marty, she said, I'm definitely a mix. One day I'm tired and the next day I'm inspired. The next day I'm angry. Like, when is this going to be done? And it's real, going through the plethora of emotions that come, that come through. I love some of the comments. We have Lou who said, when things don't feel safe, I slow down and I go into a bit of a shutdown. It's hard for me to reach out. So I really appreciate it when people reach out to me. The idea of a support system has come up. Sabrina putting this here, your support networks are so important. And thank you for the video chat. Our pleasure, darling. But I agree with Ebony. I go back and forth, mixed for sure. So here's a question, support system. How do we go about identifying who our support system is during times like this and in life in general?
I think that I'm learning that some of us have relationships where we are automatically givers and we attract takers. That was my experience before a whole lot of therapy and during a whole lot of therapy. And I've had to evolve to the place where I am at now, where I am a giver, but I want it to be reciprocal. There needs to be give and take back and forth in that same relationship for both people, for both of us to evolve and grow from each other. So I would say really try to, take a look at your support system. For me, when I was in the military, I realized I had none. And when I retired, I had to really be intentional about building a new support system because I had no quote unquote home or, anything that I really found stable. So I think it's like just really looking at your life and saying, this is it could be scary. So again, do as you need, like as slowly as you need, as much as you can.
Right.
But start to say, like, my life here in the present moment, is it what I want?
Right, right. I love this from JMC. The best thing to remember is that there's no one way to deal with this. Comparing ourselves to others isn't good. We just need to be honest on how we feel and seek help if necessary. Facts.
I'm not able to hear for some reason. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Let's see.
I'm not sure why I can't.
Let's see.
I see your lips moving, but it's like.
Try to pop back in.
Yeah, I'll be right back, y'all.
Yeah, try to pop back in. While we're getting her to pop back in, I'm actually going to talk a little bit more to the stories and kind of the things that I've been going through with my anxiety and isolation and how this goes into us actually building out nomadness. So people don't understand that one of the side effects of isolation is this dying need for community, right? And that happened to me when I was living alone in Japan for a year. I actually, from March of 2009 to March 2010, I was an English teacher at 7 different Japanese schools, public schools, and also a bartender on the weekends. And I tell people, if you ever want to live somewhere and get the underbelly of the situation there, to definitely bartend at one of the foreign bars. But I was going through anxiety. I was a couple years in at that point. And even with being in there, I was experiencing isolation because I didn't speak the language, right? And this is a shout out to all these expats. If you're an expat out here or have been thinking about it and have never done it, this story is for you, okay? I am one of you. I was out there teaching English and I didn't know the language. I wasn't living in Tokyo, so I wasn't in a city that was really big for English speakers or really big for foreigners. I was in Niigata, Japan. It was the biggest city on the west side of the country, but it was not as progressive as a Tokyo or Osaka or even a Kyoto. And so for me, it was literally getting used to my neighborhood one block at a time. Getting used to the fact that I was stared at, which was also isolating, getting used to the fact that nobody was coming out to visit me. And the year that I was out there, nobody was visiting me. And really understanding that being an expat and abroad, you also have to find out what your support system is there. So we got Deran back. And what I'm talking about is how being an expat and traveling, how the isolation breeds to community. Because when we spoke before this call, we were talking about how that's the same case for both me with Nomadness and you with Black Therapist Rock. So my isolation and the genesis of the idea for Nomadness was because I was hyper isolated for a year. No family. The guy I was dating at the time didn't come visit me in Japan. None of that. None of that was going down. And so when I came home, I was like, yo, I need my people. Like, I need a community of people that understand what travel feels like to me, why this is important, all of those things. I need that community. And so I'm interested in how isolation played into your need to build community as well with Black Therapist Rock. So what was that process for you?
Yeah, for me, it's kind of long drawn out, but as a therapist / social worker, I was in the military. I was kind of rounding out my career in the military. I was a newly divorced mom. So a lot of my inspiration usually comes from trauma. I always say our trauma sometimes gives us our gifts when you do the work, right? So I was newly divorced, single mom, which I never wanted to be. And I was in Italy, which is absolutely beautiful. But I thought, how the hell am I going to travel with a 2-year-old? And so I started to kind of get creative with how can I make this work? Like I can either, get depressed as I'm working with people who are depressed and not be of help to them, or I can figure out some coping mechanisms to keep myself going for the sake of myself, my son, and all the clients that I had to serve as well. So I just, I was really passionate about finding ways, some kind of way to make this time of growth and of healing. And I found that in travel. But I also found it in the work that I was doing. I was highly inspired by, working with other people who weren't having such a great experience in Italy, right? A lot of wives who couldn't work and were stuck at home with kids all day also couldn't travel. But more specifically, really, it was about the stuff that I was seeing on social media about what was happening in America. Here I was this 2-year-old little Black boy and wondering what's his future going to look like when we get back, quote unquote, home, right? America's supposed to be home, but it doesn't feel like home to me. Like I'm in all these other places that actually feel more safe to me. And so I started to ask myself, okay, something needs to happen. Like somebody needs to do something, because Trayvon Martin had happened. And in the months leading up to now the establishment of Black Therapist Rock, our current person who's in charge of the country was going through his election process. And so that was highly triggering, because I was not only in another country where most of the people who lived in that country thought Americans were crazy, but the Americans that I was surrounded by on the military bases were pretty much in support of him. And so I was in this awkward place where I couldn't talk about that. I couldn't talk about the struggles of raising a little Black boy. Like I just didn't have a place to be my full self. So I felt like, somebody needs to do something to really work on the mental health of the Black community.
Yes.
Because all these traumatic things are happening. We're watching these police shootings on social media. It's like a collective trauma that we're experiencing, and nothing's happening to heal that. So it doesn't just go away. Like someone has to do something. So I kept saying, someone should do something. Someone should do something. And I realized, you're someone, and there's probably somebody else out there saying the same thing. So I felt like, it served me as a way to connect with other therapists who also might be experiencing some vicarious trauma, in general, watching the news. And it would connect me to the experience and being a part of something to actually be like a solution.
Which is amazing. Amazing. One of the questions that we sourced earlier from Instagram today actually was, where can people go for finding Black therapists? And this is something, because I speak so openly on my personal channels about being a therapist, I've literally gone to my therapist, who is a white Jewish woman.
I love Jewish women.
She was my counselor. She was my counselor in college, and I kept her because she was just amazing. She knows where all the bodies are buried. She knows all the secrets, She's been with me through everything. And so sometimes I'll ask her, like, listen, I found you very early on in my life, which is not the case for most people. They're approaching self-help, therapy, all of these things much later in life. With that being said, where's a resource? Because I have a lot of friends that come to me and they're like, look, I'm looking for a Black man or Black woman. And people are starting to get very specific with what they're looking for in a therapist before even getting into the office. So for somebody who's looking for a therapist of color, where do they go?
I would say for one of the greatest resources is Therapy for Black Girls. That's a lot of the resources that are referrals that I send out to. So Therapy for Black Girls, if you look like me, or however you look, you identify as a Black girl. Or also Psychology Today, if you're just looking in general, if they don't have to be Black, if you're kind of more open, Psychology Today is another one. There really are a lot of resources that we share on our Facebook page. So if you're following us on Facebook, kind of just scroll through. A lot of organizations are sponsoring free or low-cost therapy right now. Another resource, if you're looking, if cost is an issue, BetterHelp usually has therapy available or therapists available for, I was told today, $30 per 30-minute session. So, if that's something that you can maybe swing, that might work for a lot of people. So there are some resources, and I'll keep sharing on our Facebook page for either free or low cost right now. I always like to just encourage people that you kind of get what you pay for.
Right.
Like I said, the more specific you're getting, the more, I wouldn't be surprised if it gets more expensive.
Right. Understood. I love this comment that came through from Marta. She said that this experience has taught me that virtual communication is just not enough for me. I need to be in the room with people, especially with my family and close friends. Now I'm anxious about meeting that need. And I want to touch on this. Have you ever read the book, The 5 Love Languages?
I've read through it. I'm familiar.
Okay. So I've been putting this up on my social media channels for the people specifically like me who two of my love languages are physical touch and quality time. And I think this also plays into people who may be in like international relationships, long distance relationships now, and they can't see their partner, they can't touch their partner. So for people who have like quality time and physical touch, that need is just like, how are we supposed to satiate that in this moment? Because it's real. It's so real. I miss like hugging people, literally just hugging people.
Right. And I'm a little spoiled. Like my partner was able to come here. He's quarantined from New York. But before that, I was touching myself.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, I was like,
yeah,
you know, literally.
cats,
like,
my pets are being rubbed up all on me.
I'm sure it was weird to some people, but like I said, I just accept whatever moment I'm in. Like, this is what I need for now, you know.
Right.
And I know, of course, we need other humans to touch us. But you have to kind of, I don't know, it's hard to really prioritize what you need and to get, how can I get it met?
And it's being safe right now. Actually, speaking to the idea of relationships and some of the things that people are going through on an international scale, cases of domestic abuse and divorce have shot through the roof. Okay, we can talk about resources for domestic violence, but somebody who's coping with something like that, what would be your insight into the people that are in those types of situations where being safe at home may not even be an option, unfortunately?
Right. I might sound like a broken record, but my encouragement is always going to be seek professional help, you know, because the thing about safety is there's physical safety, but there's also psychological safety. And a lot of this is really, when we boil it down, I'm not feeling psychologically safe in my mind. Like, my mind just, it feels like I'm in, there's a threat, right? Like something dangerous is happening to me. And I wouldn't trust sometimes your friends or your family members with that kind of burden. Like, it can be burdensome for them to have this big thing to have to help you with, right? Not saying we shouldn't use our support system, but we also have to be realistic about what they can handle, especially during this time when we're all handling so much, right? So being mindful of the people that we care about and love, and knowing when we really need to be seeking into some professional help.
Absolutely. We can't use the people in our lives as dumpsters. You know, when we have the best of intentions. I love this. Marty put something, she said, as women in relationships with Black men who have a lot of trauma, how do we approach them about needing therapy without seeming like we're trying to fix them or prying to get into their lives, even though they definitely need help? And do you think Black men need to see older Black women because she is more like their mother? So let's break this down into bits.
Let's talk about the trauma.
This is an amazing question.
Of my life studying that question.
All right, so let's go. Let's go.
So, and I've been like so excited to answer something like that. I'm going to, again, use my personal experience. My preference is Black men. I love Black men. I'm raising a Black man, and I want him to see a Black man in our household raising him with me. And that's something that I didn't grow up with because my father was in prison most of my life. So this is like, Black men are such a special population to me, like I said, because I'm raising one. And I always want to be careful that I'm not like feeding into the stigma and the stereotype about being afraid of them, right? There's a lot of rhetoric in our society about Black men being dangerous. And that was my experience growing up because my father wasn't there, right? So I had a lot of things in the back of my mind telling me that. And I had to really work with my own stuff. That's a lot of the time it's sneaky. Like, Black women, we don't realize that we have even received messages about Black men because it's everywhere. Right? It's in the air that we breathe. And when you're breathing air, you don't stop to think I'm breathing air. Right? So we have to really just stop and think, what's in the air that I'm breathing? Is it as it relates to patriarchy, racism, materialism, individualism, like being strong, having to do it all, comparing ourselves to him, just so many things, so many messages that we receive, and just making sure it's the life that you have chosen to live, not the life society told you to, right? So it's really, and in that, what I've learned in my own personal study is that as I heal, my relationship with Black men is very different. I'm more warm and loving and compassionate and understanding. And not to say that we can save or change anyone, but when you love on people real good and the way they need it, not the way that you need or to give it, right? The way you want to give it, but a deep appreciation and love and patience. Right? When you approach it with that and you say, I'm flawed, you're flawed, love heals all things. And with love and patience and growth, we can do this together. Right? But a lot of times we see them as flawed and we got it all together. And I'm like, racism has done a number on all of us, actually.
Yeah, it has. And there's still residual effects happening. I think for me too, just throwing my own personal life in there, I use myself as almost like a case study and a safe space for them. I try to make sure that my relationships are safe spaces. I've had many men, both in intimate and in friendship type relationships, open up to me and be vulnerable in a space where they have not shared these things with people that are close to them. And I think that there is an aura and there's an air of like a woman and us being able to nurture in specific ways as well. I too, to your previous point, am a giver. And I've realized that one of the things I need in a partner is I need to be in a relationship with another giver. I need to be in a relationship with somebody who is a nurturer and can feed back into me naturally the way that I feed into them. But I also bring up like their sexual, not their sexual past, but one of the things that I definitely ask men that I'm dating is like, have you ever been with a man? Have you ever been interested? Like, these are things that people are not asking. And I ask them, but one of the things that comes up is therapy. Have you been in therapy? There's a lot of PTSD from life that a lot of Black people, let alone Black men, are going through. And so for me, I always bring this up as a conversation. And I've actually realized that one of my deal breakers is I cannot be with a man who does not have a self-care regimen. If you're too high and mighty and too machismo and all these other things for getting help or not seeing where you need help, I realize that those are not the relationships that I can be a part of, because it then discredits and almost like dumbs down all the years of work I've done on myself. How do I do all this and try to heal these generational traumas for myself and generational traumas that my family never dealt with, that I'm trying to deal with before I have kids? But then I allow myself to be in a relationship with somebody who doesn't do the same or hasn't done the work or is adverse to it. I'm not honoring myself in that situation, I realized.
Right. And the bonus is that there are certain wounds that can only be healed in a relationship. Most of our deepest wounds are from our parents, the first people we loved, right? They're not perfect. I'm a parent. I realized my son will have some wounds. In the first beginning, I had a lot of anxiety about not messing him up. And then I realized it's life.
Yeah.
That's kind of the beauty of it. Like, is to kind of mess it up and then try to figure it out along the way, right?
And try to fix it again.
Perfect. So our deepest wounds need to be healed by love.
Yeah. And love looks like so many things, right? Love looks like so many things.
Yes.
I think that that's absolutely
platonic relationships, number one, in my opinion.
I have a lot of male friends, and I think I have more male friends than female friends. And I know people have their own thought process on that situation. They can keep it to themselves. I really don't care. But I like showing up. And I've always been like that because I grew up a tomboy. And so for me, it was like I studied men as their friends at a very young age to kind of understand how they maneuver and their whole gist. But I think that it's really powerful. I want to speak to the fact that right now, grieving is different. We're losing people. People are losing family members. They're losing partners. They're losing friends. We are in a space where funeral homes are packed. They're not even picking up people at this point in time. So many stories that I've heard. I lost a friend on Saturday that I grew up with, not even from COVID. She had an ongoing battle with cystic fibrosis. Wow. And COVID is like, CF is like the exacerbated version and lifetime version of COVID, really. It's all about attacking the lungs and mucus. So with this and people passing now and not being able to go to funerals and things of that nature, can you talk to some things that people can do to help with grieving in this moment if they can't even say bye how they normally do? Because I think that that's a psychological thing that people are they're in it right now. And a lot more people, unfortunately, will be affected by this.
Right. I also want to talk about complex grief or complicated grief, because we're grieving a lot of things. And when you're grieving, like, you're losing humans and you're losing freedom and you're losing this, your normal, your sense of normalcy or routine. There's so many losses at this time. And then on top of that, for it to be complicated by not being able to, have a celebration of that person's life, or not being able to honor that person's life in a certain way, and pay tribute to their life's work or legacy, I think is complicated, right? And so for these complicated situations, I'm always going to recommend therapy, because I don't know anyone who's an expert on complicated grief unless you have done some training for that, right? I don't think that we just normally know how to do complicated grief. And a lot of us, like people like me, have complicated grief issues in our childhood. You know, all the things that I didn't have, not having a father, not having, you know, so many things that I needed as a human being. And I'm still constantly every day grieving those things. So, like I said, to me, it's like about complicated grief. I'm grieving my childhood. I'm grieving so many reminders of my childhood. I'm also grieving present losses. And I can't even imagine like losing someone close to me and not being able to honor them with that kind of just farewell. So it's complicated. That's my main.
It is. I like that you use the term complicated grief, because that's really what it is. I'm big on freedom, and I don't like anything that makes me feel like my freedom is being hindered upon. And I may like being home for a little bit, but I like that option. I've lost so much during this quarantine because I run now, because running is the only thing that gives me freedom. And I saw in a previous comment about people talking about exercise during this time, and we're definitely going to get into resources. Like I said, I've identified 10 from my own life, but there's something that I've noticed when running, and this also came up in a conversation with my best friend. She asked me the other day, she was like, you know, do you feel like people are like mean right now when you go out and you have to do your grocery shopping? And I told her, I said, no, I don't think that people are mean. I think people are scared. And so what's happening is when you have these masks on, and I actually remembered this from teaching English in Japan, I could never tell if my students in my classes were having a good time if they had a mask on. So I'm like, I don't know if you're smiling. I don't know what you're doing. All of our facial expressions that we normally read, cues from, are gone, right? Because of the mask. But in addition, I've noticed that when I'm out on the street or having to go somewhere, it's even been difficult to get people to make eye contact with you. So I'm interested in the people that are in the comments. Let me know if you're noticing this and the times where you do have to go out. Is eye contact weird? Is it just a New York, New Jersey, Northeast thing?
That's what I'm gonna say. Tell us where you live too, because
So I'm in New Jersey. My friend who I was talking to lives in Brooklyn. But it's something that we're noticing. It's like people kind of like are looking, but then they look away. It's almost as if they're like, they want to say something, but they can't. And they want to look at you to recognize you, but you don't. I feel like the fear that has been really like ingested into us over the last month and a half has affected the way that we even talk to one another or try to engage. I mean, we have to have social distance, but it's like, damn, it's hard in some places for people to even look at each other.
And I think if we put that into context, like if you're in New York and New Jersey, the exposure rate and like the cases and the media around like what's happening there is more in your face. And it's more real. I feel like the threat is it feels more real. And it's really, like I said, about psychological safety. Do you feel safe? Here in Maryland, I'll say this is the friendliest people have ever been.
Which is awesome.
A Southern girl from the country city in Texas, I'm like, this is what I used to. I'm loving it. Like people are saying, how are you? Hang in there. You know, there's all these signs around. I mean, it's just people, it feels like a community in my neighborhood.
So we have a couple people. Lanisha says, when I'm out jogging and I pass neighbors, they tend to wave or at least do a head nod. She's in Detroit. But then we have some other people like Sexy Sagittarius, who says, Atlanta here, yes, people are not making eye contact.
Wow.
So this is something that is really starting to kind of see. Let's see what Lou says. NYC, I find myself searching for eye contact from strangers as a way to connect, like we're in this together.
Right. And I feel like that's the way it's been in Maryland. And I'm like, why can't we? I'm almost one of those people most of the days. I want to stay in quarantine. I'm like, if it makes people nice and able to speak, like
that's not what it is here. In so many places, Percy says, I'm in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and eye contact has been a little bit better lately in rare instances that I'm out. Maya's in Seattle. She says it's known for the Seattle freeze. It seems like there has been more eye contact, smiling, and engagement. People want that connection and they usually hid from it. This is so interesting to kind of see where everyone is, like, because it's not the same everywhere. It's just not. Right. Everybody's dealing with it differently. So here's a question I have on the psychology, like after quarantine, right? From people not having physical touch, people wearing masks, and in some places, people not making eye contact. Literally, we're being told to avoid people. What does that look like on the other end, trying to come out of this?
That's my fear. And I said that like the first week. I was like, some people are gonna love this and they're gonna say hell no to the regular, grind. Because like a lot of single moms that I know, or just moms in general, they're either saying I hate this because I can't do work and my child, or they're saying I absolutely love this and I'm never leaving my house. Right. So there's a spectrum to that too. But I do worry about, like, after I retired from the military, I can't even imagine going into an office now. And I worry about the people who are going to be required to. I have some serious, because a lot of us just, the transition is hard. And once you get used to something, it's normal, then you're grieving that, right? We're going to grieve the way this was.
It's so interesting. I was talking to Issa Rae, actually. I was texting with her last week and she popped into my head. I hit her up and I was like, Issa, just checking in on you, seeing what the deal is. You popped up. She was like, I'm trying my hardest not to get used to this. And I was like, yo,
me too.
That's real. Like, that's real. You don't want it to necessarily become your new normal. I think for me, I want to assess my life and and I have been assessing my life and my business and seeing what I like and what I want to change. So I know what to implement. It's like I'm taking the best of outside of quarantine and the best of inside quarantine, right? And trying to mash it up to figure out what the hell we can make from that. And so for me, that's been how I'm going on it. But I'm very curious in what it's going to be like, not just with traveling, but literally just getting out of this. And, we want to run up and hug people, but then it's just like, damn, are we going to be hesitant and think twice about that because of everything with COVID? Am I going to have to do a 14-day quarantine? Like, where have you been for the last 2 weeks before I like hug on you? Or for me, even like when I'm single, because physical touch is one of my main love languages, I would go get massages regularly, because I need to be touched. And so for me, it's like, I was like, what the hell is like getting a massage going to be like anymore? Like, spas, like, what is it?
Here's my complicated grief situation. Like last night, it hit me in the shower. I'm in denial about a lot of things, about where we are with a lot of things. And I keep thinking it's going to get better, in 1 month, 2 months, but none of us really know, right? So it's complicated to grieve and prepare. And like, you just don't know. So I'm kind of grieving the fact that more than likely, I'm going to say I ain't going to get to go to my 20-year high school reunion that was scheduled for this summer. Right. It just hit me in the shower. I'm like, but that's so important. And we can't do that virtually. Like, we can't make it up. Like, that sucks.
Yeah.
And so even though some people may say that's privilege, it is privilege, right? For that to be the main thing that I'm worried about. Totally privileged. It still hurts.
Yeah. And that's valid. That's valid too, right?
The high school seniors who aren't graduating, the college graduates that aren't going to get to walk, it still hurts.
Yeah. Yeah. We don't know what it's going to look like. So what I want to do now is I want to talk about some resources, right? So I know you have like the professional resources we're going to run down, but for people who have gone through anxiety, people like me, entrepreneurs, just people just trying to deal with the day. I made a list of 10 quick things. Number 1 is therapy, like hands down. Listen, I'm going to talk about therapy, especially to Black folks, until I'm blue in the face. You need the therapy. For anybody who's dealing specifically with anxiety, for me, what worked was the Midwest Center for Anxiety and Depression. It was like a 16-week course. It was just like a notebook. It was all of these. What I liked were the community-based group conversations that they had, because it identified like what if syndrome, which is something that activates anxiety. What if this? What if this? What if this? I suffer from anticipatory anxiety because I'm so heavy. So I anticipate all the things that can happen. And that's what breeds the anxiety for me. Also, it taught me that no is a complete sentence. Which is another thing.
Boundaries. I wanted to bring that up earlier. Boundaries.
Listen, boundaries, no is a complete sentence, and you do not have to explain your no. Sometimes no is just no. I don't have the bandwidth for it. I don't want to do it. No means no. Another thing that works for me was homeopathy. This is actually what my homeopathy looks like, because I'm more into natural remedies and dealing with things kind of head on and psychologically. I know it looks like a drug vial, but this is what homeopathy looks like. You actually sit down and talk to a homeopath. It's like a 2.5 hour consultation. It's like a therapy session. And they match it kind of like the flu. The flu, they give you a little bit of the flu shot and your body creates the the antibodies that it needs to fight it off. What they do is they match your symptoms with a natural remedy in the earth. And that's what you take about 30 times diluted. And so for me, like when my anxiety was up, my remedy was like magnet of the North Pole. I know it sounds crazy, but that shit works. So we gonna roll with it. And then as I got through and dealing with my anxiety, because now I just may have symptoms that pop up or episodes, but I used to have anxiety daily, right? Once I got over that hump, what I was going through, they changed. And so this remedy, believe it or not, is salmon. It's like the technical medical term for salmon. And it's one of the newer ones that they have, but I take that every once in a while when I'm going through symptoms for the stuff that the phase I'm in now. So homeopathy actually worked for me for those who are interested in alternative medicine as well. Also meditations, but I realized that because my brain goes so much, I need a guided meditation. And Tara Brach, do you use Tara Brach? Tara Brach's meditation, her voice is like a tranquilizer. They will knock me out. I'll go to sleep off of them. I love Tara Brach. I love her. And even into Buddhist teachings, because I'm more spiritual than I am religious. And as far as the spirituality and the religions that I've gravitated to the most, especially living in Asia, I've always gone towards Buddhist teachings. And so for me, that's something that definitely helped. I'm a talker, so talking through it with people and exercise. I spoke to you about this when we were doing our pre-call for this. I need aggressive exercises. Know what type of personality you are. I was kickboxing 3 days a week before this, and now I run probably more than that in the middle of this. And it's because my body needs an aggressive workout. I need something that literally gets that actual energy out, because that's how I see anxiety now. I approach it as energy. And it's extra energy that just needs to get expelled from the body. Right. I'm also one of those kooky people that are into like cards and crystals and meditations and candles. But really what that gets into is like meditating, creating and curating your own home space. What does that peaceful space look like for you? I have spent an exorbitant amount of money on candles during this damn quarantine.
Always.
People are spending money on other stuff. My thing is candles because they help keep me calm and they curate my space. So what does curating your space look like for you? You know what I'm saying? So I'm interested, what are some of your resources, some books, some podcasts, anything that you have that you would be able to share with our community to help?
Yes. One of my favorite resources right now is I'm seeing a lot of leaders, you know, and you may not, I hope everyone who's watching this considers themselves a leader, but if you have children, if you are part of any kind of community and you're contributing to that, you're contributing to a family, you know, your sisters, your brothers, whoever, you're leading something, you're influencing someone, right? So leadership, the way that Brene Brown defines it, is anyone who's willing to accept the responsibility of influencing others and being influenced, right? So for me, I believe in connection. I believe in, like I said, reciprocal relationships, and that there's a lot of leadership, self-leadership in that, managing your own self. So one book that I would really, really recommend is Dare to Lead by Brene Brown. It's one that I've been kind of putting on repeat myself. Another one is You're a Badass at Making Money. Like, it's had to remind me that where you are right now financially is not always where you're going to be, but how do we manage what we have for now and manifest what's to come? So those are two of my favorite books that I'm personally reading and kind of rotating between, that I've already read before, but rereading just for the affirmation, the reaffirmation, if you will.
Absolutely. And I love Brene Brown's Gifts of Imperfection. I started reading that during quarantine because I think we need to ease up on ourselves. I always tell people I don't need anybody to come through and critique me because I'm already doing it in my head. So,
most of it.
You know what I'm saying? So it's just like, I don't even need all the external stuff because I'm already in my head. Boo, you late, pick a number. You know? And so for me, it's important that I deprogram that, you know, and that I'm constantly checking myself with that in regards to those things. What are some websites? What we're going to do is we're definitely going to post, because I see people in the comments going off on this and they're very much interested in having some of these things posted. So we will post all of these after the talk in the comments, but websites that people can use as resources, you know, your group, if that's open to them, what are some other places online that they can go to?
So our group is only for mental health professionals or those who work with mental health, very closely with mental health professionals like nurses, coaches. We reserve our business page or our fan page on Facebook. We have a public fan page, which is in all caps, which you may or may not realize the difference, but it's all caps. And there is where you can kind of find more resources, websites, links, podcasts, all kinds of things. I would also recommend following us on Instagram, of course, where we have a lot of great conversations in the comments section there. And what I love is Brene Brown actually does follow us on Instagram. She's one of my great supports and mentors. And she'll just drop a bomb in the comments and everybody's like, oh, So I would say Instagram is really fun place to learn and just get into some conversations about mental health. So really real and transparent, honest conversations about mental health. I also have recently did a video where I did a live therapy session with another one of my mentors, who is the founder of a model called Internal Family Systems. And what that is really accepting all the parts of you, all the experiences that have made you, and kind of collectively grieving step by step the things that have happened and the losses that have occurred over your life. So like I said, if you didn't have the ideal childhood, you didn't have the ideal relationship with a parent, you can kind of learn to work with that part of yourself as a child, to see it as a stuck child who's at that age when that thing first happened. And you can bring it into the present and love on it as you are an adult now, right? You can love on that part of yourself as a wounded child that just needs a little bit more extra comfort and support from you. Because as we grow up, we realize that we are really like he says, Dick Shorts, he says, you are the one you've been waiting for. I know I spent a lot of my years looking for somebody to help me, to save me, to love me the way I really needed to love myself. And so I love that model. It's completely changed my life. I highly recommend it. You can go to the Black Therapist Rock page or to the Internal Family Systems Facebook page or YouTube page, and you can find the video with me there. It's a live session, kind of shows you what that looks like. It's kind of more to the spiritual realm of things, like you said, about the Buddhist mindset of really coming to an acceptance of where we are now, like realizing, getting centered in where we are now, and bringing those other parts of yourself that need to be caught up and need to be loved into the present moment.
Yes, and it's so important now. We have so many resources that are being dropped in the comments. We have blackgirldoctor.com, 2 elephants in the room, for mental health. We have Get a Tune app for therapists. Oh my goodness. Secrets of Wealthy Women podcast, speaking to the financial aspect of this. So many resources. And we're definitely going to put in the comments the resources that we also said as well. If anybody has any questions for Deran, please put them in there. Deran, just in general, people following you, where can they find you directly?
Okay, it depends on which part of me you're ready for, right?
Like
real. What's your hashtag? Real life Evie or real Evie?
Real life Evie. It's like which side you coming for? Because it's all real. Yeah.
Right. So my personal page is more real life. Like my son did this crazy thing, or said this crazy thing. Like one day he said, "Mom, that's so racist," and I'm like, "Boy, what? You're 7. Who's raising you?" So
meanwhile, he's like you.
Things like that. That's my personal page. If you're more interested in like mental health tips, I do have a professional page where I share stuff there. Like I said, the Black Therapist Rock Facebook page and the Instagram are really great places as well.
Awesome. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time here. I also want to wish you an early happy Mother's Day.
Thank you.
Because you guys deserve it. I can't imagine what you guys are going through right now. It's like work-life balance in the crib.
No. Before we get off, let me just say that I shipped mine off. I figured it was time for daddy. Like, daddy, here you go. This is not a mommy thing. Like, mommies I don't follow rules very well when it comes to my child, and he's saying he misses his friends like crazy. He would be outside playing with his friends right now, and then I would be having anxiety about us dying from it.
Absolutely. And it's interesting. Our next quarantine, we haven't announced it yet, but our next quarantine content piece is actually going to be on the work-life balance, particularly with mothers and parents that are inside. So we're going to be deep diving into that conversation in the coming week. So I'm super excited with that. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time. And we will continue the conversation and do the good work. You guys look out in the comments for what we're going to be adding to the resources. All right. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye.